This is the podcast for your soul. On-road action, feel that flow. Big chassis on-road podcast show. Turn it up loud, let everybody know. Big chassis on-road podcast show. Let's go.
Hello everyone, we are back again.
Yep, that's right. Thanks for everyone who's watched the first couple of episodes. It seems you kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah, it does indeed. Thank you very much. Well, with no further ado, let's just get on with it, shall we? For what's going to be the Bent Chassis On-Road podcast. It's episode 3, and this week it's the TITC in Thailand. Let's find out who's bent a chassis this week.
A few moments later.
Okay, and now with TITC being one of the biggest and most famous races in the world, we think it's right that we talk to someone who's actually been there to help us with the inside story.
Yep, so we reached out to perhaps the most experienced touring car racer there is in the whole world. He's been racing touring cars since, well, before touring cars were touring cars, in fact. To our maths, he's got, I think, 10 UK national titles. He's a multi-time Euro National A finalist. He's an ETSA finalist, an IFMA Worlds finalist, and most importantly for this, a 2-time TITC veteran.
It is our great pleasure to welcome our first ever podcast guest, Chris Granger.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Hello, Chris. So thanks for your time today. Like us, you've probably been watching the coverage of this year's TITC. We all know that obviously Michael Olowski dominated in modified. It was Lucas Ellerbrook who won the open brushless stock class. And we've seen plenty of videos of Michael and Bruno contributing to the Bent Chassis title of this podcast with some epic crashes as well. We're not going to talk about this year's race to start with. Chris, we're going to kind of pick your brains and talk about the previous experience of races and talk about the race itself in general. Now, if I'm right, you attended the race twice in 2008 when it was at the old RCS track and 2010 when it was at Addict where it is today. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So the 2008 one, I think I went because the World Championships were going to be there later in the year. I think that was the reason for going, because I think Yokomo was obviously getting towards the last ditch effort of Masami trying to win the Worlds in the touring car class. So they were full steam ahead that year to get as much prep and information as they could for the Worlds at RCS. So so they invited me to go to the TITC, which obviously would have been the February. I think the Worlds was like about August or something like that. So that was why I ended up going there in the first place. And then, I went again in 2010, 2 years later. So, twice I've been there.
And that second time was with Schumacher, wasn't it? Yeah,
first time with Yokomo and second time with Schumacher.
And that yielded a 7th place finish, I believe.
Sixth.
And
I thought it was 7th.
I thought it was 7th. That's what the article says. Yeah.
Well, I was convinced it was 7th. If anyone had ever asked me, well, where did you finish at the TITC? Oh, I finished 7th. I was happy with that. 7th was fine. And then, of course, because I'm doing this, I went rummaging in the shed to try and find the trophy, fighting off the spiders, and I found the trophy. I'll just grab it.
Oh.
Wow. Actual memorabilia. Look at that.
I have trophy from 2008 TITC, and let me get it in the right place for the camera.
6th runner-up, modified class main.
6th.
Yeah, it does. So, but the official record, the Red RC article, actually says 7th, doesn't it?
I know. So,
whose trophy did you nick?
Yeah. Did you steal a Sushihara's trophy?
Maybe I took the wrong trophy, but I don't know. I was 6th or 7th. I'm happy either way, to be honest with you. I've even got my pass look from the event tied to the trophy.
I'm going to read off the top 10 from this as well, because I think this is interesting actually. And these are all names you're all going to know, and most of them still there.
This is going back to 2008, so this is 18 years ago.
18
That
years
makes us
ago,
all
yeah.
feel old, doesn't
And
it?
that was won by Timu Lino, Andy Moore, second, Ronald Volker, third, Alexander Hagbird, fourth, Naoto Matsukura, fifth. Now, questionably now, sixth at Sushihara, apparently. It says officially Chris Granger was seventh, Victor Wilk in eighth, Mark Reinhard in ninth, and Masami Hirosaka, legends there, in 10th place. There's some big names on that list.
Yeah, it was good.
Huh?
I was very happy. It was it was probably one of the best races I've ever been to in my life. It was fantastic. Just everything about it. So obviously on the finishing position, I don't know that you're getting the results off of red, aren't you? It's the red coverage.
Yeah, the TITC
their
red
coverage
press, yeah.
afterwards.
The one you sent me.
I think I came seventh, so I don't know why I've got a sixth place trophy. I must have nicked Tara's trophy.
Could be an investigation after this. Maybe the internet can help.
We've got them mixed up somewhere along the line. Maybe he's got mine somewhere. But yeah, it was a fantastic race. It was probably one of the highlights of my RC racing career.
Was you out there for an extended period of time before that race?
Yeah, well, I think we were there for about a week. It was the early days of it, so it wasn't quite as crazy busy as it is now, and even the one in 2010 was a lot busier. So we were there. I'm pretty sure the race was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like they always are. And I think I probably went on like the Friday before, Friday night or something there. So I was there from like the Saturday before. So I had like, a good 4 or 5 days just free practice. And it was just fantastic. I mean, RCS, if you speak to anyone who's been there, I'd be surprised if they didn't say it was their favourite track they've ever been to. It was just incredible. It was perfect. It was the perfect size. It had the perfect amount of grip. It had perfect curbs. It just looked fantastic. It was really weird. You sort of went down all these back streets in Bangkok, and then you sort of went down this sort of dead end road, and it was a complete dead end road with at the other end of the track was like a bungalow. A few people. It's like the end of the straight round the sweeper, and the other side of the sweeper basically was like a bungalow, and a few people had to go around and knock on the door and say, "Can I have my RC car back, please?" Because it was in their front garden. And it was really weird. It was just like a dead end road, and I'll never forget. It was really just interesting because obviously it was back streets of Bangkok, so there was some, you can see people living there, with not a lot, basically quite poor, like living sort of under shelters and so on, or run down buildings. And then you got down to this end of this alley, and there's massive TV screens up, because they still, even then they had all the scoring and timing and scoring and everything. So there's like open pits that you could just walk into, like 5 or 6 TV screens on the wall, the rostrum, everything all there. And nothing was ever stolen or taken or vandalized, or it's just it just shows you you judge books by their cover too many times. You would think that anything left there was going to get stolen or ruined, but it's not. It's just not. Just because people are living the way they live doesn't mean you can't trust them with all the stuff around. It was quite eye opening actually. To look at that and think, wow, it's like it is a different world. But yeah, it was just fantastic. The whole atmosphere, the track. I loved every minute of it.
So you mentioned there like how great a race it is. So for those of us who haven't been, can you just sort of sum up what is it? Why is everyone coming back and saying this race is so special, both as drivers but also as the kind of teams and the manufacturers that go there? What is it that really, you've mentioned those parts of it, but what is it that just makes it go, yeah, this is arguably the most important race in the world?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, it's weird. I mean, even going back to like 2008. You felt like you were racing in the future. The facilities were so good. Even then it was like Deliveroo. Now people would think, well, what's so special about that? But 2008, and you could just race in, and you could just order McDonald's or pizza or whatever, and it just turned up at the track 20 minutes later. We didn't have anything like that. All the timing screens up and that. So at the time, so back then, it was amazing because it was like racing in the future. You had like this fantastic track and these facilities, and the people are so nice. And obviously, again, because it's Thailand and things were cheap then. I mean, I think off the top of my head, I think accommodation was like £100 for the whole 10 days or something in like a 5-star hotel, you know, with they'd come and want to do your washing and like iron your clothes every day and stuff, you know, properly looked after. And it was like £100 for the whole week. It was like crazy. And then, you know, taxis to. I remember Andy Moore told me, because Andy had been there loads of times. He said everything's £1. Everything you do is £1. He said you go and have lunch, it's £1. You go and have dinner, it's £1. Get taxis to the track, it's £1. Everything's £1 basically. And it was just crazy. I mean, it was just everyone's so friendly, and it was incredible. And the facilities, they say the track, so much grip, and the curbs. It's like, how did they know how to do the curbs so well? You know, where you could just ride. I mean, everyone's seen the overtake Mark did on Hara at RCS, and he could only do that because the curbs were perfect. You know, he could ride up on the curb. It was just for some reason they knew how to make a touring car track.
And since then, it's moved around a little bit as well. And your second visit was when it was at RC Addict, which is where it is now. Addict over time has been through a sort of few evolutions and resurfacing and slight remodeling and things like that. But I guess the feeling is still very much the same, and the atmosphere being the same is the most important part. And again, it's a really nice track again with curbs that you can. Certain curbs at least you can attack. We saw that this year. Some curbs you couldn't, but a lot of curbs you can, and that was kind of part of the magic of it.
Yeah, I think RCS closed in 2009, so I think they did one more TITC at RCS, and then unfortunately it closed because I think it was basically built flats and houses and things on it. I think because like I say, it was right in the middle of a housing. You know, you were like in someone's road basically. It was really weird. So I think RCS went, which obviously everyone was very sad about, and I don't know whether Adit came because of RCS going or whether it was there already. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, whether that was a new track that they built. But obviously they had, over the years, have had a few different tracks, because obviously there was Huge RC, Sirakan's place. There was RC City, was a place for a while. I don't know whether that's still going. I mean, at one point when I was there, 2010, I think there was 3 or 4 world-class touring car tracks within half an hour of where you were. Probably 2 or 3 off-road world-class tracks, you know, because the World Championships there as well for off-road. There was a rooftop track. There was like a club track that was on a rooftop, basically, where people raced on like a Wednesday night or something, which was probably still better than half the tracks we've got here, and it was on a rooftop. I get it, you know, it's cost, obviously, that they can make these tracks, and I think that's why the event has become so big, is because Thailand is quite a cheap place to stay as a holiday. You know, you can go there for 2 weeks and you can afford it. Everyone thinks, well, the TITC is on for 3 days, let's go for a fortnight and have some fun. So everyone's there, and it is like a big RC party, basically, with everyone there for a week, 10 days, just driving around the track. I remember the second time I went to RC Addict, we stayed at a hotel that was nearby, and we'd finish at like the track at like 8 o'clock or something, go and have dinner, a couple of drinks or whatever, and then we'd walk back to the hotel, and you'd walk past the track and all the floodlights, it'd be like 1 o'clock in the morning, all the floodlights on, 10 cars screaming around the track. You know, people just practice all night because it's like their holiday, basically. You know, they've gone there for 2 weeks, they just want to drive the car, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, they're driving their car around the track. So it's just like a big RC party.
That sounds absolutely brilliant. And how did you get on at that event?
So the 2010 one was not quite as straightforward as the 2008 one. I don't really know how the 2008 one went so well. I know I outqualified Masami, I outqualified Niauto. I think, that event just went absolutely perfect. I don't know why. I loved the track. Everything worked perfectly. And like I say, finished 6/7th. But 2010 didn't quite go so well. And this is one of the things that for me has sort of let the TITC down a little bit. And that's So I don't want to say organisation because they organise it fantastic. You know, it's the track's prepared perfectly and all the racing is perfect. But I think they've had some weird ideas with rules and grading and things over the years. You know, having to use your race tyres for grading, or only having one run to do grading, and counting the whole 5-minute run. I remember in 2008, the one RCS, the first one, Mark was actually in the bottom heat, Mark Reinhardt, because we only had one seeding round, and it was a full 5-minute run, and I think he stripped spur gear on like the third lap, and we were like, Mark, they'll put him in the top heat, or they'll put him in the second to top heat. Nope, it was like, nope, he's in the bottom heat, and he was in the bottom heat for the entire event because there was no extra reseed. I think this year actually it's the first time I've seen them do more than one seeding.
Mm-hmm.
They did 2 seedings.
Yeah.
They only did it over 3 laps, not a full 5-minute run. And they also did a second reseed, I think, for the final day. So, and I think that's the first time I've seen that, but it's certainly back when I did it, that wasn't a thing.
18 years to learn.
Yeah, so unfortunately in 2010, I was the Mark Reinhardt. So it was a bit weird because what they used to do, and they did it the same at RCS, and I don't know why they used to do this. I guess they thought it was the fair thing to do. But basically for seeding, they would just put everybody's name in a hat in the class, so obviously modified or stock, front wheel drive or whatever it was. But they would put all the modified drivers in a hat, say there was 40 of them, and they'd pick them out and put them into 4 heats. You could be in with anybody. So I was in with Yillis, but there was the person in with us with Yillis, and there were some random people in our heat, but there was this one guy, and he had literally started RC the day before. So he was a local guy.
We can see where this is going.
Yeah.
I am not kidding. It's unbelievable. I mean, if like Andy Moore's listening to this, he'll remember it. Yillis will remember it. But this guy lived local to the track, and he just wandered across to see what was going on and thought, and they said, well, you can race if you want, buy some stuff. So like no messing, he bought like a car and radio and everything. So he'd never driven RC before in his life. Modified straight in. Yep, let's go for the fastest one. Let's do that.
All the gear,
So of course,
no idea.
because of this, draw out of a hat, he could be in with anyone. He was in with us. I mean, it was. I mean, I think we were lapping him. We'd lapped him like 4 times before we'd done one lap because he couldn't drive at all. He just he got the car the day before.
Christ. So
unfortunately, it was one seeding, full 5-minute run, and my car had been so good that event. Through practice, I was always in the top 10. I was quite often in the top 5. It was so good, and I thought, right, all I've got to do is drive around in the middle of the track, just get in the top heat, or even the second to top heat would be fine, but get in the top heat. And so I'm driving around minding my own business, and he came the wrong way up the straight and hit me flat out and broke my car. So I was coming down the straight and he was going up the straight because obviously he'd cut across and going up. I know Yillis got hit as well, but Yillis managed to finish the run. I didn't finish the run. So honestly, I had a full sense of humour failure. I remember I was like, no, screaming. I was like, I can't believe it. And I went and saw the guy that ran it, and I said, oh, please, look at my 3 laps. I did 10 laps or whatever. Look at the 3 laps. Please don't put me in the bottom heat. Please don't put me in the bottom heat. But there was no arguing. So there's nothing we could do. And Scotty was racing. He wasn't really commentating. I think he called the finals. But he wasn't there really working. At the time, it was just one of the races he used to do. And I was sitting near him, and I was talking to him, and he said, I'll go speak to him, see what I can do. So we come back. He goes, no, they won't change anything, which I knew they wouldn't because they didn't do it for Mark, which is fair enough. If they've decided that's what the rules are, then that's what the rules are. That's what they're going to do. So I had a full sense of humour failure. That was it. I'm not racing. I'm done. I'm giving up. I'm fed up. This was a waste of time. I stopped out the place. I went to the airport to go home. I was that grumpy about it all because I was enjoying it so much because I was quick and it it was great. And I thought, well, I've now got a race in the bottom heat with this guy who's just started. So I went to the airport and I said, can I get on a flight out? And they were like, no, everything's full. Oh, we might better get you one on for like, Friday night or Saturday morning or whatever. But it was like about £600 upgrade. So I was like, do you know what? I think Thailand's quite nice. I'll just go and have a look round. So I went back and I spent the next half day sort of went and did a bit of sightseeing and looked around, and I sort of calmed down a bit. I thought I better go back to the track. So I went back to the track. I wasn't really going to race. I was just going to talk to everyone. It was a full on rattle out of the pram.
All toys, everything's been distributed. Yeah,
toys everywhere.
Feel your pain.
And Scotty said to me, he said, God, just give it a go. He said, I'll call you through the traffic. So he wasn't commentating, he wasn't anything, but he said, I'll stand under the rostrum and I'll call you through the traffic. I said, yeah, okay. And I'd missed one round of qualifying, I think. So there was 4 rounds of qualifying, I think. There were 2 to count. So I'd missed one. So I did the next 3. And Scotty was fantastic. He stood under the rostrum and he just basically, tried to get everyone out of the way. Because it was almost funny. I mean... And I know rules are rules, but I mean, it was the same for Mark in 2008. It's like, it's not actually any good for the other people because they were constantly getting out of my way. I was lapping some people, 2-3 times a lap. It was ridiculous. And they didn't want me in their race as much as I didn't want to be in their race. It was stupid. So yeah, I ended up qualifying 11th. So I was pretty annoyed. I think I had something like a 4th or a 5th, and then like a 13th and a 14th or something. So I think I ended up qualifying at 11th, it was one of the biggest upsets that I've had because I knew it was quick. It's a TITC, I was mixing it with the people there. I was the only Schumacher there. Everything was great, and it just sort of like went wrong, unfortunately. But that's racing for you, and that's also TITC because I mean it varies like you wouldn't believe. It's the morning you'll do like a 14.2, and then lunchtime you'll be doing like a 15.9, and then in the evening you'll be doing like a 13.9. It's crazy.
That's
and the
mad.
sun, it's absolutely crazy. The sun comes out and it just slows down. The sun goes in and it speeds up. You always get rain at some point. We saw this year they had torrential rain for half a day or whatever, and it rains for like an hour or whatever, and then it's bone dry 20 minutes later. But of course the track's completely different, and it might do that 2 times while you're there, or 3 times, or not at all. So, and again, the minute the racing starts, people are walking across the track and stuff, so everything changes. It's really weird how the track can be completely different every time you go on the track. It's almost like you don't know what you're going to get. So it is that when you listen to people talking, it is exactly what they say. That he's like, well, yeah, it was good then, but we'll see what it's like tomorrow because it might be completely different.
Because that's definitely what we've, watching the coverage over the last few years, that's definitely what you've seen, and I assume it's kind of the same sort of thing that you experienced there. That people find their car to be good in one condition, and then 2 hours later they put the same car down again and it feels totally different. And as racing drivers, the first thing they always have blamed is the tyres. And I know then they've tried to get around that over the last couple of years by going, right, you can glue your own tyres now, so that's not you can't be blaming things like that. But yeah, from what you said there, it's a massive sort of difference in the track, or hour to hours as the track conditions change.
Yeah, I think one of the times I was there was when they started getting you to glue your own tyres, and that was only for the finals. So there was generally a bit of complaints about, some of the tyres are not good, some of the tyres are bad, whatever. So I remember for the finals, so it was probably the 2008 one, you could basically build your own tyres. So that's a box of wheels, box of inserts, box of tyres. You could go through them, and you had to do it in an area, obviously, so you couldn't leave and put something different in. But as long as you're in that controlled area, you could go through as many tyres as you want, as many inserts as you want, and build up your own sets of tyres. Because obviously, again, because I think it's easy to jump to those conclusions because it does vary so much, but the weather is so different out there. One day it's really humid, and the next day it's not quite so humid. I mean, it's always humid, but the humidity goes up and down so much whether there's rain coming or not coming, and it massively changes it. Humidity massively changes it. I remember I was at I was at Yatabe, which was indoors, and I remember it started to rain outside, and Masami basically said, "Oh, the next run's a waste of time now." And he said, "Because it's raining." And I said, "Yeah, but it's raining outside." And he said, "Yeah, because he said that the humidity's now gone up like 20%. He said, so the track's going to be like 3/10 slow, whatever." It just makes a massive difference, which we don't really notice here because we only basically have shit weather here. We don't. So it's constantly shit. So we're okay on that level. But when you're abroad and the humidity goes up and down and the temperature goes up and down, the track just changes. Especially in these Far East countries and Asia and so on, it just changes. It changes like the wind, changes like the weather. So it's just difficult. It's almost impossible to stay on top of it.
And I guess that also ends up, we've often seen some really interesting results at the TITC, and sort of thinking back through it, the sort of standout pieces for me often have been things like Infinity often seemed to do well there, and this is prior to the Bruno days as well, when they had a car which, let's be honest, wasn't as competitive at other races. They always seemed to, pull something out at TITC and do well there. Other companies like Express, and again, a name that you don't normally see at the top, they've had some really good results with multiple A finals. And also smaller brands like Axon also seem to really be able to do well there. So, from your experience of what, you see in Thailand, what is there anything that drives that? Or is it just the skill of the drivers and that's what affects things a lot more at that particular track and with those conditions?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just that the tracks are so different. And also because they're permanent tracks, they're all day long. You can go and use them anytime you want. And they're well prepared. I mean, I remember going over to Thailand to test for Schumacher, actually. There wasn't a race on. And we just went there like during the week and they'd still prepare the track. Again, because it's they can afford to do it over there, because of the cost of living is cheaper. So, some guy would come out on the track at 7 o'clock in the morning and clean the track and coat, spray the track or whatever they spray it on, or they drag these. At the time, they used to drag these big cloth things around, which was soaked in something to clean the track and sort of coat the track and give you the grip. And they just did that every day. And if it rained, they waited till it dried and then they did it again. So I think because those facilities are like that all the time, there's so many good drivers that are local, that just are there, might go there every day after school or every day after work. I mean, I know that, say, Yatabe, Niauta used to go every day after school, basically. So he'd finish school and go to Yatabe Arena until his mum made him go home to go to bed. And I remember, you turn up at these places and the first half day, there'd be someone going around the track and you were like being lapped by them, and they were probably sort of my age now, they're like 50 something, and you think, Jesus Christ. And after you've been there a couple of days, you're like quicker than them, but because they're just so used to it and they're driving around it all the time, obviously you get the the youngsters and that and the different, and if they work on the different cars and stuff, they're just so used to it that it's just a little bit alien to everybody. And obviously people like Bruno and Michael and that, they go every year and they travel all around the world, so they get used to it quite quick. And obviously they're the best drivers in the world. But I still think you get if you look at the results, you'll get certain people at the TITC which is sort of in the top 20, which probably wouldn't be in the top 20 anywhere else. You just get, occasionally you get the odd name, so you don't even know who they are, but they're a local, who just goes well at that track and they're there all the time.
And there's a lot of home drivers there as well, isn't there? Jules, Hara, Moore, they've all lived in Bangkok, and I assume they probably spend just as much time at the track preparing as any other local does, depending on how close.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've all lived there for a while. Hara lived there for a number of years. Andy's still living there now. Yillis was there for a number of years. Because again, as a professional RC racer, where else would you want to live? You've got these fantastic facilities, you've got fantastic weather, and you've got a cheap cost of living. So it's an absolute ideal place to set up a base and go wherever you need from there. But again, I think people have just moved away through family. I think Hara's gone back to Japan for family, and Yillis went back to Holland because of family. So it's we're all getting older, and these things priorities change.
I suppose the one that in my mind, there's always been sort of two. I use the word very carefully here. Criticisms of TITC. You've touched on one of them, which is sometimes an odd race format or stuff like that in terms of not the organisation, but those sorts of side of things. And the second thing has often been the lack of media coverage. It's not really been, it's never been live streamed until this year, I think, and there wasn't even, Red RC type coverage wasn't there until just before COVID, I think it was. That was maybe their first or second trip was a few years around then. So I've always wondered if actually some of that may be added to the allure of the race, that, there's a really cool race going on, but we can't see anything about it. So next year, let's just go there and race it ourselves and watch it too.
Yeah, that could be true, actually. I mean, obviously, the less you know about something, the more you want to find out about it. But yeah, I don't really know why there was never really much coverage. I mean, I don't really know, really, because, I mean, all the top drivers have been going there for ever and a day. Go back to the first couple, you always had Mark and Hara, etc. there. So it's always been a big race. So, yeah, I don't really know. It was nice to see the coverage this year, but, yeah, I don't know. But you might be right there, to be honest with you. A lot of the time, as people have gone, well, we hear all about this TITC and about how amazing it is, because I reckon it's probably, like I said, the 2008 one is definitely probably the highlight of all the racing I've ever done. It's certainly up in the top 2 or 3 of races and results. But even the second one was just fantastic. Apart from the disaster of qualifying and so on, the week building up to it, and then even after that, it was still a fantastic event to be at. And it is just, they're also friendly. It was like, if they weren't doing anything, like not putting him in the bottom heat, was just, those are their rules and they're sticking to their rules, which is fair enough, to be honest with you. And Mark proved it in 2008. It didn't matter who you were, what your name was. If that's what happened, that's what happened. And he was in the bottom heat and I was in the bottom heat. So I threw my rattle out my pram, but it was only because I was just disappointed in it. It was just one of them things. But yeah, they have always had a few random things like the format, the seeding, tyres, and lack of coverage. But I think apart from that, it's a pretty standout event, to be honest. I'd certainly recommend anyone to go there.
I think that's really good, actually. I think that's probably a great place there to cover out the actual general feel of what it was all about. And I think we'll just take a short break there and then we'll actually get into what happened this year and how that one looks. Thank you very much, and we'll be back in a second.
A few moments later.
So let's move on to talking about this year's race then. As we said when we started this podcast, we don't want to be here just kind of listing all the results and talking through who made the A final and stuff like that as a results thing. You've already seen the results online, I'm sure, and seen loads of videos over the weekend. And actually, let's start off with that as kind of the point. And we mentioned it just to wrap up that last section, which was the lack of media coverage in the past has now been replaced massively this year by having the Red RC coverage, which again has been there for the last few years. But then we've had the trackside RC media photo stuff on Facebook from Automatics and Nicole. We've had the live stream there with RC Race Media, the guys from Australia, along with Scotty doing the commentary for that. Plus, we've had RC Racing TV there, Matt and Patrick doing video updates throughout the whole week as well. So it's kind of really been an about turn. And I think for this year, it certainly feels like people not at the race have really felt part of the event. So last time we asked Martin what he thought of the race when we were trying to find out some coverage. So Chris, what did you think of the coverage of TITC this year compared to, particularly what we've seen in the past?
I thought it was really good. I mean, I think the only thing we could do is get them to change the time zone.
Yeah.
We could race like later in the day or whatever, so we didn't have to get up in the morning and try and watch it without seeing results. It's a bit like Formula One. I woke up on the Sunday morning, I thought I'm going to go on YouTube and watch the A finals before I read anything, because obviously I'll know the result, and I sort of quite wanted to watch it. But yeah, I thought the coverage was fantastic. I think RC Media with Scotty and what's the other guy? The other guy's Scott, isn't it?
Yeah, doing the interviews and stuff.
Doing the interview, yes, Scott as well. So Scott
Yeah.
and Scotty. I think Scott is absolutely fantastic. I thought at the Off-Road Worlds he was incredible. I think I've said so many times, I think at the Off-Road Worlds, their coverage was absolutely fantastic. The guy that was commentating with Scotty was really on form. And then you had the Scott, Australian Scott, in the pits interviewing people after races, exactly the same as now at the TITC. I think he did an absolutely fantastic job. I think he just asked good questions. He just comes across really calm and when he's talking to people, he seems knowledgeable and listens to what they say. I just think he's very, very good at what he does. And obviously, we know Scotty, when he's commentating, can be very, very good. So I think they did a fantastic job of doing it live. I thought Matt and Patrick's stuff was fantastic. I loved the, going across the road, get some food and stuff, because I remember those stalls, they were there when I was there, and the food is fantastic. I remember coming back and telling my wife all these things that I ate, and she's got to try and cook them for me because they were so good. And she was like, well, what's in it? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. It was rice with bits and bobs. I don't know. It's like £1, but it was really nice.
The price point being an indicator of what actually ingredients went into it.
Well, I asked what was in it, but I thought that was fantastic. So I thought their little daily updates and so on. And I thought the fact that they, what was nice was they got the A finals onto YouTube really quickly with good commentary. I thought Patrick, again, first time I've really heard Patrick commentate, I thought he was really, really good.
Yeah.
I thought, because he's very, I think with Patrick, he's very knowledgeable and very keen. He loves it, absolutely loves it. The only thing that I thought was a bit weird with Patrick is when they were still on the rooftop and he said he was scared of heights. I thought he used to work on planes.
Generally, though, Chris, when you go on planes, like the doors and things are shut.
You're not going to fall off a plane.
You're fairly high, don't you? When you look out the windows, it's a bit strange in being scared of heights. But no, I thought they were fantastic. So
to be fair, so just to clarify this, Chris, your only criticism of the whole of the media coverage of the TITC is that Patrick's scared of heights.
Well, it didn't make any sense because I was just like, but he used to work on planes.
This is
He
special.
on planes, which are like it's higher than a rooftop. But yeah, it just made me laugh. But no, absolutely. I thought the coverage was good. I loved the fact that I could go straight onto YouTube, and within an hour or whatever of the final being out, that RCTV had put up their 5 minute of the A final with Patrick commentating. I thought that was really good. So you didn't have to go through the live feed to try and find the final that you wanted to watch or whatever. Because obviously we couldn't watch the live feed all the way through because it was the middle of the night, basically. So you'd have to get up in the morning and then skip back and try and find it. So I thought coverage was good. Red did their usual stuff, of writing about what's happened, after the event. So at least you can sort of read through and see some comments, a bit like a newspaper article. And then you seem to have like 1 million people on Facebook taking photographs and doing their own little take on, coverage and stuff. So it almost felt like there was almost too much this year.
Yeah, and you say about Patrick's commentary, actually, and it's not his first language, but you wouldn't have known.
Exactly.
And it was absolutely magnificent. I think the person that's going to be even more annoyed at the TITC, I'll say person, the animal, is my dog. Because I'd get up in the morning, get ready to go out, and we'd go strolling around. And I'm looking at, this is a 34-minute video, and I'm just walking around watching this, going around, doing laps around the field. So she got a lot more of a workout over the weekend and the days leading up to it, while I was just watching and catching up everything in the morning. Yeah, incredible contrast.
It was really good to watch. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I've never seen Patrick commentate, but I thought he did just a really good job.
Really, really good.
It was a good listen, basically. It wasn't sort of like commentary, sort of like, in there or out wherever, but it was just a general nice talk over a race, basically, which I thought was really good.
Contrast, isn't it? But that all commentators are different. Everyone does something different. And not everyone likes the style that every commentator actually uses, but everyone does something different. I like that variety in commentators as well, because otherwise it'd be a bit boring if everyone was doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. They've all got their own styles.
Yeah, but he added to the event. He really, really did. I mean, there was some spectacular commentary during the finals as well. We'll get onto those in a little bit, obviously. I think we start maybe around, the practice this year as well, and obviously the timesheets, and there was so much going on leading up to the event as well. And they were just showing the MyLap screens, and there's transponder number, blah, 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 because people don't want them to know whose transponder numbers they're running in the car. They're doing times, they're disappearing off the ball, they're having them removed. So the gamesmanship obviously starts way, way in advance of the actual event. So, and probably a question back to you, Chris, when you did it before as well, and even still at this level of racing now. Do you sandbag a little bit when you do these kind of things? Do you hold back so you don't show all the cards too early? Or do you just go for it and say, come and catch me if you can?
I think it depends on the level you're racing at. I certainly know at certain nationals back in the day, I did a little bit, not at a national, but like pre the national, you didn't show your full potential because obviously you didn't want Elliot exactly to know exactly how quick you go, sort of like always back off a bit or, sort of feel like you, even if you weren't, you sort of felt like you were holding a bit back, that you could go a little bit faster. But certainly for my level, something like a TITC now, I'd be absolutely like flat out. But you can imagine that people like Martin, that's you. People like Michael, Bruno, at their level, they are professionals and they're at the top of their game. Yeah, they probably do during practice, a bit like I felt I did in, when I was racing for nationals back in the day.
And I guess the weird thing about practice is obviously when you're looking at that and you've got, as you say, talks about this, like guys there for a week beforehand sort of practicing, that board generally just shows that hot lap speed. And, you've got one of those in the first lap on a new set of tyres, probably if you do it at the right time of the day. So it's one of the things that definitely plays with people's minds, it seems, as you go into that. People thinking, yeah, I'm fast, or I'm in the mix, or I haven't got pace, and then things change quite a lot by the time you jump into qualifying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, say we look at that board that just generally gets put up on Facebook by someone, and it's usually posted by someone who's on that board somewhere.
On the board, yeah.
So like, oh look, here's the board. Like, oh look, there I am, fourth or third.
Just after they've done their happy hour run.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you do see it, and it does mean nothing. I mean, you say it means nothing. It was usually Michael at the top, and it was usually Bruno second. So that's what happened in the end. So it probably doesn't mean nothing, but it does mean nothing really, because it's literally one lap. And if you go out at 6 o'clock in the evening on a brand new set of tyres, you're going to be fast. And someone's gone out at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with a new set of tyres, they're going to be slower. So it's sort of a bit pointless, but it's but like I say, it must gauge something, because it was usually Michael at the top and it was usually Bruno second, and that's how they finished. So they were generally that fast.
So you wouldn't be fathoming someone from another team, not on the Schumacher side, standing there with a stopwatch trackside at various points when someone goes out timing their run off of that instead.
Oh, I mean, yeah, for sure, everyone will be timing everybody. Every time Bruno went out, I'm sure that Michael or Mattia or whatever was timing Bruno to see how fast he was, and then you'd generally, the way I used to do it, and back in the UK, say it would be the same as like we're at Cotswolds and Oli goes out, so I go out straight after him, so I know that it's representative, of the track conditions, so I sort of got a rough idea of where I am, and I'm sure they do exactly the same at TITC. Or if they're out at the same time, they'd probably be timing Mattia might be timing Michael, and someone else will be timing Bruno in the Schumacher team. So they've got an idea of exactly what's going on. So they all know basically where they are by the time qualifying starts. I still think that I'd like to see less tyres. It's something I go on about all the time, and I know it's a bit of a, some people think it's a good idea and some people don't. Maybe more people think it's not a good idea, but I like tyre tactics. If you have a week of practice, you have seeding practices, then into qualifying, and then 3 finals, and everything's on new tyres. Everyone just puts themselves in the right spot. So whoever's top seed is probably going to qualify first, and whoever qualifies first is probably going to win. Where if you've got limited tyres, okay, maybe the fastest guy won't win, or the second fastest guy might not be second, but maybe that's more interesting.
So I wonder if, because you said about the changing track conditions there, if you was to take, say, a new tyre run when the track's peak, you're obviously going to set a faster time, right? But then if you're in the tyre games there as well, is there more to be done with when in the evening, when the track's fast, that you're probably still going to get a very good time off of a used set of tyres? Or do you think you'd still probably be doing quicker times on the newer tyres when the track isn't, like you said, nearly a second a lap slower?
I don't know. I mean, I'd say it's hard to say. I mean, if I remember rightly, the last time when I was there, new tyres weren't faster. It was the traction was so high that you were actually quicker on second and third run tyres. We used to run I remember being at Yatabe a few times when we ran the tyres in, because the second or third run was faster. Because the first run, it was more like racing on carpet. So the first run, the tyres had good grip, but you generally understeered, so it's just too slow, and you'd generally be faster on your second and third run on the tyres. But I haven't been to Thailand since, as we've said, 2010, and obviously things have changed a lot. Tyres are a lot different now than they used to be. I wouldn't like to comment on it really, to be honest with you. Nowadays, it's very rare that you get a tyre which is faster on its second run wherever you are.
Fair play.
And I suppose, rounding out the practice element of things, I think one thing that we'd all spotted, and everyone probably saw the video, was Michael's big crash at the end of the straight on one of the practice days, where I think then when he spoke to Patrick afterwards or later on, he said the car wasn't actually that badly damaged, but it looked like a big off indeed. And we've seen plenty of those sorts of crashes through the week as well. Obviously Bruno then in the finals, but I think it was really interesting and quite good of Michael to post that sort of video up there to kind of show, hold a hand up, everyone makes mistakes. And Chris, your experience of that wall's claimed many cars over time, hasn't it?
It was exactly the same when I was there. The wall was always there, and if they ran that layout, you're pretty fast. I mean, it's a fairly long straight, so the cars are going, and it's a sweeper on as well, so the cars are going at a heck of a rate at the end of the straight. And again, because there's so much traction, you're going into that sweeper so fast. So yeah, any small instant, you're going to have a broken car. I didn't see Michael's car. I saw the motor though, because I think someone posted a picture of the motor, and the motor didn't look very happy at all. But I remember Andy Moore going into that wall in 2010. He went into it twice in a row. He went into it and destroyed the car, and he sat there because this was earlier in the week. He sat there for like a day and a half and rebuilt the car. And then the next run went straight into it again. I think most people who've raced at that track for a number of times have been into that wall at some point. You're just going into that corner so fast. And it is a little bit bumpy. I mean, most UK drivers would go there and go, bumpy, really? Compared to some of our tracks. But I think that they are smaller bumps, but they do tend to show up a little bit because you have got so much traction. So you tend into the cars sort of lurching and leaning around so much because of the traction level. So the smaller bumps probably do make more of a difference than you think, actually.
So in terms of, like you say, UK tracks versus, just to try and give people an idea of the bumpiness, I mean, what would be a comparison in the UK? I mean, is there anything to it? I mean, Halifax is it's like a billiard table, right? And then, there's other tracks. I mean, are we talking like just above that? I mean, Cotswolds, pretty smooth, but, there's still changes in there. Where would you put that? Give people an idea that have raced outdoors. Is there anything?
It's hard to say again because I haven't been there since 2010, and it's been resurfaced at least once since 2010, and it looks like they've done some repairs and stuff as well because there's a few little patches and things. But I remember there were a few little bumps, but I don't think you'd struggle to compare them to any of our track. I mean, it would be like
just a head scratch.
Probably, yeah, Cotswolds, and you'd be like, well, where's the bump?
Okay.
It's a tiny little thing, but they do show up more when you're going faster with higher traction, that's for sure. So, but I couldn't really comment on how bumpy it is now. But I mean, the cars doesn't look that bumpy when they're going round to this. It's not like they're bouncing all over the track, So I think it's probably just a few little dips and things in places which can catch you out if you just catch them at the wrong place, I would have thought.
So let's talk about the actual race itself, qualifying and the finals, and again, rather than reading the results out, let's break it down sort of and go through the different teams that were there and how they were doing. So no particular order, just I think as we sort of rattle them off our heads and everyone sort of jump in and add some parts to it. So first one that sort of jumped out to me, I guess, probably is in the sort of group of teams that I think you say you didn't get the results they wanted, really, and probably some teams in that, like RC Maker, they had a lot of new parts on the car. I don't know if it was a complete new car from the sounds of it, but saw quite a few interviews with Ryan through the weekend. But staying fairly positive from it, kind of appreciating it was sort of like a test session, and they don't have the full-time pro drivers like the other teams do as well. So kind of tough race for them, but still, they're a new, fairly new company, and it's a development phase, I guess, they're going through still as well. So
yeah, I think it's very difficult, I think, to judge any team if they haven't got a certain driver. I mean, you can see that if you look at the results, some people that have done well, maybe they were second, third, or fourth, or whatever. If you took that driver away, where's the next one?
Yeah.
So you might say, well, that car's amazing. It finished second, but if Bruno hadn't been there, what top would have been Victor in seventh, which would have been still a good result. Don't get me wrong, but it's not second, is it? So it goes down. So if Ryan's got no superstar drivers, he's unlikely to make the top 20. And then you think, well, it's a failure. He hasn't made the top 20, but he wasn't going to make the top 20 if he didn't have a top 20 driver.
Yeah,
so it's very difficult.
Yep.
I think that seems a good one actually to jump straight into Mugen, and someone who was, as Oli said, very close to his heart last weekend, which sounded awkward, but I'm just going to remind him that he actually said that, and it was recorded and it's out there forever. And Ronald didn't make the big show, but his results have been incredible. We talked about him last week about the start turn of the year. He's been absolutely fantastic, but for what reason he didn't manage to make the A this time?
He qualified 11th. 11th is a good place at the TITC.
Any place is a good place, but yeah,
very good drivers in qualifying 11th place. But
sensational all the way through. But yeah, I mean, it was going into it. I'd have had Ronald right up there as up there to potentially win the event as well, and it just shows how hard it is.
Did he have much of a? Was there much of a team there, Ollie? Was there? Who did he have with him? Which other drivers? Because I know Soren wasn't there, was he? Or any?
No.
Was there any other top drivers there with him?
So Patrick Goldner was there from Austria, and Patrick seeded into the B heat after practice. So at that point things were looking okay. Ronald was seventh or something, I think, in seeding, and Patrick into the top 20. But then just didn't seem to click in qualifying. I think his best score was maybe like a seventh again or something like that. And I think Patrick was in the C final. So seemed one of
the times were nothing in there though. I mean, they were literally hundredths of a second, and that moves you down. The field was just so close. Incredible, and surprising.
You've got like 20 plus world-class drivers, that have been practicing for a week. So they're not, and they're all on brand new tyres. They're not going to be very far apart. So one small mistake, and you're going to be, 6 places further down than you would have been. Just wobbling a corner. So it is just very, very competitive.
We're going to roll through this list, and you say, how do you go to an event and pick 10 drivers? And there's 20, 30 drivers there, and you go, he didn't make the A, he didn't make the A, he didn't make the A, and there's lots of them from this weekend as well. That just shows you what peak quality level the event has got to. That you've got these top line drivers, and there's hundredths of a second step apart, and the speeds they're going as well is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We were just talking about half an inch off of an apex somewhere. And it's less than a blink of an eye, and that's a difference between one place and 15 places. It's unbelievable.
I think it also shows how absolutely incredible Michael's been to go there. This is only his second time there, and he's been there twice in a row now, two years in a row, and he's pretty much 2 years in a row. I think he's lost one race, one round.
Yeah,
he TQ'd every round last year, and he TQ'd every round bar one this year.
He
obviously won the 2 finals, didn't have to run the 3rd final. So basically in 2 years, 2 TITCs, he's lost one heat.
Yeah.
To Bruno, who's fairly good.
He's not bad, is he?
So that's just incredible.
Let's just stay on Schumacher and sort of jumping around the rough list that I know we had before. But mentioning Michael there, and that kind of comes back to what you sort of mentioned earlier, because Michael dominated the event, won it, comfortably the fastest person there. And then, yeah, the next Schumacher was, I think, Pecco, who was back of the B final. Again, a decent result. But if Michael wasn't there, would the car look as good as he's making it? So it's often having that 1-star driver, and Michael's one of the people that can really kind of hook it all together.
Actually, the driver makes all the difference at that level. There is only, like, the World Championships are coming up in China, and we're thinking it's going to be one of 4 people out of those 4 people, 2 are pretty far ahead of the other 2.
Yeah.
So at that level, those drivers really do make a difference. And like you say, if Michael hadn't have been there, you'd think, oh, no Schumacher's in the A final, But I don't think they've, no disrespect to Pecco or any other drivers, none of them are quite Michael.
Yeah. And
again, none of the others are quite Bruno. These drivers, they're once in a generation sort of thing, that come along, it's just a handful of them.
Seems a pretty reasonable point there as well to jump into Infinity, and they seem to have a pretty mixed bag as well. Obviously Bruno was right up there, thereabouts. We'll get onto the finals in a bit. Victor, he did really well in quali and finals. Naoto, not a top class name that we talked about earlier as well, and he didn't make it there as well. And the drivers just making that much difference to the chassis, small setup changes, track condition, track knowledge. But Infinity had a huge team there. And I quite like those pink shirts they're all rocking out, and the pictures, because we saw lots of social media. I'd imagine the information gathering they were pulling back from every run they were getting out there was a huge amount of race data was being gathered back. And comparison to Schumacher, obviously not as much race data out there as well. But, if you go equal talent for talent, there just comes a point when the car's on the racetrack and you've just got to deliver what's in front of you. And if it's got new tyres on the car as well, then it's just hanging on if it's edgy. If it's a bit loose, again, just hanging on and driving it as hard as it would into the corners and hoping it's going to stick.
Yeah, I think like Naoto's result was really interesting to me because he got a third in the first or second round of qualifying.
Yeah.
And then had nothing else out and you only needed 2 scores to get into the final. And I think that's an element of how tough it is. And, Naoto is very, very fast, but he isn't the most consistent driver. And we saw the Nitro race in China a few weeks ago, where, again, he had a TQ or a second or something, and, again, didn't make the final and had to bump up from the semis. You can't do that in electric. So
no,
that was interesting.
Always been the same. He's always been the same. And I think you messaged, or it might have been Matt messaged during the event and said, Niauto's got a third and a 52. That seems pretty normal. And it is for Niauto because, he's unbelievably fast. And the first time I met him was in 2006 or 2005 at Yatabe in Japan. And being Billy Easton, we were in stitches watching him because he'd go out on the track and he'd always wait. Him and Masami would always go out together, and he was super fast. I don't know how old he was then. He must have only been about 11 or something. And he'd always go out on the track with Masami, and he'd follow him around and be all over the back of him and sort of hassling him all the way around. And then he'd hit the corner and he'd hit the wall 6 foot in the air. The car would bounce back on the track and he'd roll over. Masami would come back round again. He'd tuck straight back behind him and just be all over him again. He's just incredibly fast, but always had a big mistake at some point. And I think obviously he's matured from that. He's a multiple-time world champion, but he's obviously still got that in him. I think he's one of them drivers who is always on the limit. You get certain drivers that can sort of drop back 5-10%. But I think Naoto's 100% up. So he's always as fast as he can go.
Yeah.
And there's no margin for error then.
And the thing that interests me, obviously, as you say, Bruno was the only person that was going to beat Michael, but Michael had to make mistakes for that to happen, and he just didn't. And then it was Bruno who made the mistakes in the final. The first final with a crash on the second lap, that was, looking at the video, that was all on him. And then in the third final, the rear wing coming off the car, so something being missed on the maintenance side there.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. I think the the first final, I think he knew that he needed to get Michael in the first half of the race, because it did seem that Michael always had a bit of an advantage the second half of the run, on sort of tyres, not going off, or the car was better in the heat or whatever. So I think he knew he needed to get Michael in the first, half a dozen laps, and he was, you could see he was really pushing, and I guess he just over-egged it onto the into the sweeper at the end of the straight and just caught the curb too much, and then that was the end of that one.
Yeah.
The wing was a shock, to be honest with you. I think that's if it was a Formula One team, there would be serious investigations going on there. M3 lock cost you a week's work, basically. But these things happen. You see it in Formula One, these teams are professional. Infinity are a professional team, but they're, in comparison to a Formula One team, they're amateurs. And we see these things happen in Formula One. So if they happen in Formula One, they're going to happen with toy car racing.
Indeed. And the last point on Infinity for me was first race with Robert Peach, then kind of at the track with Infinity. Turned out he was actually working on Victor Wilkes' car. And after all of that happened in the finals, who was the highest placed Infinity at the finish line?
Victor.
It was Victor at the end of it after Bruno's issues. So Robert kind of carrying something with him, I think, over there maybe. But I think it's really interesting. If you haven't watched it already, watch the interview that he did with Patrick, where he talks about, kind of coming into the team and a lot to learn and a lot of process to go through. So just very much sort of finding his feet. But I found that somewhat funny for me. It was just like, his last race with Ronald was a really good result there, and now he comes over to and the car that he picks up is it ends up being the highest placed one from that team. So that was quite funny, I thought.
And maybe they'll change the mechanics over for the Worlds, like they've done in Formula One before.
Maybe, yeah.
Your mechanics, and the other one will have the other mechanics.
Yeah. So moving on to a different team, one I wanted to touch on this one was the Express team, a brand that you don't really see in Europe at all. Small company out of Hong Kong, I think it is. But Yugo Nagashima, the Japanese driver, driven with him for a couple of years and made the top 10 fairly comfortably last year. And again, that was one of those sort of like, I wouldn't say weird results, but surprise results to us over in Europe anyway. But maybe then almost, this year didn't feature in that sort of list at all. And was, again, sort of back half of the B final. So again, those cars that sometimes getting dialed into those track conditions and sometimes not.
Yeah, I think that's a TITC thing for sure. It's like, it's if the car works, the car works. And it's a very, very difficult window to find the car work, to get the car working properly in those conditions. And sometimes if it's just not working, you chase your tail and you never quite get there.
Yeah.
On the niche manufacturers, I don't know if that's the right term, but for us, you'd say niche. Axon, I think, would be a place to go next. And that results out there, all the way through qualifying. The cars look really, really good, but you don't see them here. I remember when they launched the new Axon platform a little while ago, and you looked at it. It's a very traditional, car, just standard shocks, carbon wishbones, and like very, very similar kind of platform to everything else. But you don't see them out here. But then over there, the results out there will seem to be very, very good for the platform again as well. So why are these cars not making it over here as well?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. And Chris, been actually not sponsored by a chassis manufacturer. I know you've actually had an Axon car and played with that a bit over this winter time.
Ooh. And
obviously for them, Akio being a net second overall at the race, and Hayato also making, solidly into the top 10. I definitely would have put both of them in the final. My list of finalists was probably 20 drivers long, as we said, but they're ones that you kind of don't want to count out. But Chris, you saw a few pictures, I think, and sort of looks like, again, quite some updates to their platform are potentially being used there as well.
Yeah, it looks like they had some new bits and bobs. I mean, I don't know whether they're bolt-on bits and bobs or whether it's a whole new car. From what I sort of see, I think it looks like it's sort of like new bulkheads and maybe lower wishbones and things, but nothing too major. So all the drivetrain, all that looked exactly the same. I think Axon done a fantastic job. I've got one of the cars I've been playing around with, and I really like it. The quality is very, very good. But they are a really small team. A small company. I don't know fully about it, but I've spoken to them, and I've tried to get some sort of interest into the UK with them, and they just say that they can't do it. They just haven't got the they can't make enough stuff, basically. So they're pretty much like everything goes to either places in Japan or Tony Sport, and that's all they can really do. I sort of said, would you be interested in getting a UK distributor or try and get Tony to do something more into the UK? And they pretty much said, well, we can't meet that demand at the moment. So they just don't. I guess they don't want to take on more than they can cope with, and they're happy sort of doing what they're doing and selling as many as they sell at the moment. But I think they're doing a good job, and I think it's one of those companies, I think, that's either going to just go away at some point, or it will slowly get bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually it will go a bit more worldwide.
Yeah. Well, thinking then of, I guess, a bit of the opposite of that, companies that have been big and seemingly getting smaller is Tamiya, but now seemingly trying to get back into the racing circuit a bit more over the last couple of years. And it was really good to see, I suppose, one of their cars making the final, with Goto making it into the top 10. But a real kind of, I suppose, an unknown with that platform. We don't quite know. If we have ranking the drivers, we don't really know where he stacks up on the list in terms of his outright ability, and we don't quite know where the car is either.
No, that was a good result. I mean, TRF, they've never stopped. They've always they carried on making cars. They just stopped having a team. They just stopped spending the money on the named drivers. And I mean, they had, what a team they had back in the day. With Mark and Yillis and Victor, etc. It was they were like it was. You'd liken it to Ferrari, wouldn't you? Because like the Tamiya plastic company was the supplying the money, selling the hobby side of things, the hobby kits and kids to play with, and then the racing side was your top drivers like Mark and Victor and Yillis at the time. I thought it was fantastic the way it worked, and I guess just the way of the world, they obviously decided that there just wasn't enough return for that outlay, so they cut back on the drivers and so on. But TRF never went away. It was always carried on. Keogh, who was sort of the head of it, always carried on and made stuff. They just didn't have any drivers to drive it. And like we were saying before, if you haven't got the named drivers, you're not going to get the results. So I think that's a fantastic result from them. Where it goes from here, I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether they want to come back fully into it or whether they're just happy doing what they do. And I think I got a feeling Keogh just likes, it's one of the races he likes to go to, the TITC. So I think that's probably why he's there. I don't know whether they'll be at the Worlds. So we'll have to wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah, be interesting to see, won't it?
But yeah, it would be lovely to see Tamiya back at the top.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, that was it. I'd say it was the type of thing that you need. It's like I said, you connected them to like Ferrari, where the normal sales and then the team, at the top with the TRF stuff. And I think that's really nice to have from the bigger companies like Kyosho, Tamiya, those sort of companies. It's nice to see them, included in the top class of racing.
Yeah.
One of the biggest manufacturers out there, X-Ray. That was interesting. Sawada was the only one making it into the A. The names that you would generally see up there, Hagberg, Ronnefeldt, still, I'd say, newish to the team because he did do the TITC last year as well, and he didn't make that there as well. But then the platform didn't seem to do as well there last year either. I mean, they were quite distant back. But Alex looked good in qualifying and practice as well. And then, it's another one of those, like we said, those top 20 drivers that you're almost penciling into the A final as well. And, they seem to struggle as well as the conditions seem to change during the qualifying rounds. I don't know if the team presence was as big out there. I mean, I saw some pictures at the end, but because there's other classes running as well, you can't be sure that they're all running without knowing all the chassis names out there. But that was a surprise. And Martin was there as well. Obviously, he'd have been supporting the team. I thought they'd have probably got a bit further up this year. Not quite, though.
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because I think anything inside the top 20 is a good result in realistically, you know, because we know how many good drivers are there. So you can't say it was terrible. I think David Bonifant is a bit difficult to say because we don't really know how good he is in on-road. We know he's world-class in off-road. And so because he's world class in off-road, he will be very good in on-road because he knows how to drive a radio controlled car. But whether he's quite world class in touring car, you know, sort of like top 5 in the world, we haven't seen that yet, have we? So we'd have, you know, that's still to be shown. Alex, we know, can be good. And like I said, I don't think he had a bad result. He was sort of bobbing in and out of the top 10 all week. And then obviously didn't quite go his way and he's ended up in the B final, which is not terrible. And Jin obviously did a very good job popping it in the A. I think anything that was in the A final, especially if your name's not Michael or Bruno, or Ronald or Mark, I think anyone else who's in the A final should be very, very pleased with their result.
I think anyone that's even in the B will be very pleased with the result. There's no bad results out there because, like we said earlier, there's nothing in it, nothing in those times at all, and that's just, like I said, just a small grab of a curb or just in and out of a divot, a tiny lift to correct a car, and you've lost so many places there. They're all great results, you know. I'd be happy to make the F final down there if it only went down to E. They're all fantastic. It's easy that this could have been any other names driving any other cars that we're talking about here tonight, because it is tonight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would have thought Alex is probably disappointed. He was obviously very disappointed not to be in the A final because he's a professional RC driver and he's going there to win or certainly podium or at least be in the top 10. But I bet if you looked at the results, it was probably only he was probably only a few seconds away here and there. You know, it was probably 10th of a second here and 10th of a second there. Otherwise, he would have had
barely even that
rather than an 8th or something, and he would have been in there.
Yeah. Incredible level of competition. It's better than the Worlds.
Yeah.
Well, it probably is. I mean, you'd need to look at it, but I'd be surprised if there's as many there. I mean, I don't know because I think this World seems like it's going to be quite popular, so it probably will be, but it'll certainly be on par. It's certainly on par to a Worlds. And it's definitely as difficult, if not more difficult, to win the TITC than it is to win a World Championships.
Yeah.
Only one can win.
Probably doesn't mean as much, I guess. You know, it wouldn't, I guess, realistically, but it is certainly as hard, if not harder, to win.
So the final team I think we probably worth us talking about, and final one of the names up there was Automatics, and similar to X-Ray, maybe a mixed set of results. Mark, one of the names you'd expect to put in the mix, he looked like he was in the mix to start with, but sort of dropped away a bit, but then ends up qualified 5th and finished 5th, I think, at the end of it, something like that, or in the top 5. On the other hand, Lucas Urbane, someone else you think would again be in that list he put in the A final, he missed out on that. But then for me, the standout driver from the race was Simon Lauter, making the podium at the end of it. And even without, you know, if Bruno hadn't made those mistakes and crashed out, Simon definitely would have been 4th, which is a fantastic result. You know, he's made an ETS modified podium as well over the last couple of years. Won the open brushless class there, I think 2 years ago, and has dominated the stock class in Europe prior to that. So I think for me that's another proof of the people sort of moving up from stock and, you know, committing properly to it and proving that actually they've got the skills to do it in modified, and really pleased to see Simon do well. And I think that was a good result for Automatics to have someone on the podium. Probably not the driver they thought was going to be on the podium, though.
Yeah, I think Simon's fantastic. He's a nice guy, and his driving is fantastic. And he shows that certainly there's no reason why anyone can't do modified. The guys that are at the top of stock, they're very, very good drivers, you know, world-class drivers. They just need to commit to it, I think. And you can see from Simon when he won the Worlds stock and then decided that was it. He was, you know, he sort of reached the pinnacle in stock.
Yep.
There's not really much more he can do. He's won the World Championships in it. So let's do modified. And it didn't just happen overnight. I mean, he wasn't rubbish, but he wasn't he wasn't going to make podium at the TITC straight away. He was B final ETSs, back towards the back of the B final ETSs, and he started to get into the A final, and now he's someone you'd expect to be in the top 10. So it didn't happen overnight, but it also didn't take a huge amount of time. So you've just got to commit to it and just and go for it. And I think there's a lot of stock drivers that, if they wanted to, could be as successful in modified as they are in stock. But a lot of them, I think, they're happy what they're doing. If they're happy what they're doing, then you do. If they're happy doing what they're doing, then if they're not a professional, and they're not being encouraged to do anything different, then you can't really, make them do anything different. I suppose it's difficult. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's like, you stop people doing it. Do you make them go up? If you win it once, you can't do it again. But then for 90% of the people doing this, it's a hobby.
Yeah, he'd say yes to that.
How can you tell
I'd
people what they can do and what they can't do?
Well, it's interesting because TITC is the one race where they do have that rule in place. If you win their open brushless stock class, you can't race in that class again. And so we saw Simon had moved up. Soren won it last year. He wasn't there this year, but he's obviously, has moved himself up to modified, and another name in that. There's definitely another whole podcast in talking about stock guys moving to modified, I think. But in terms of TITC, I think that was, what did the results say at the end of it? Michael TQ winning, pretty much dominated. You say dropped one round of qualifying. Bruno was his closest challenger, but needed Michael to make mistakes, and Michael didn't. And then Bruno was on to make some mistakes and threw away the second place really with those. So that meant we had Akio Sabu second overall with his Axon, and then Simon, as we say, with automatics rounding out the podium. Yeah,
so, I think that with Mark, I was thinking about Mark. I think TITC. The problem with TITC for Mark is I think he's only won it once.
One time, in 2006.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
That was a meme last week, right?
I think the problem with Mark and TITC is too much practice. I guarantee it's like when they used to do Dash for Cash, Mark always won it. That was probably to do with the money as well. But he's just one of those drivers. I think if you put everyone in a room and laid out a track and said, right, there you go, race for 5 minutes, no practice, no nothing, Mark would win. He's just naturally amazingly good. But I think there's too much practice at the TITC. I think that's the problem. I think too many people, and then he just sort of gets swallowed up, and unless it's, everything works out perfectly, because it's still a fantastic result. I mean, 5th is still great, and he's proving that he's getting older, but he's still got a few years left in him for sure. But I think that's the problem with TITC for Mark. It's too much practice.
Too much practice.
Too much practice. It doesn't suit his style.
No. Well, I think that's basically all the race covered for now. We've rambled on quite a lot about everything that happened there. So we can wrap that section up there, and we'll come back in a moment to see what's next.
A few moments later.
So that's, I think, a good place for us to wrap up this episode. Then it's a very hot and busy week in Thailand, and for those of you in the UK, it's been a very wet and windy week for us watching along as well.
I want to say thank you very much for Chris Granger for joining us. It's obviously great to have all your experience and insights in here, and to catch his reactions live. From a personal note as well, I'm really pleased to spend this kind of time hearing these insights and things from you. You won't know this, but we were one of the reasons I started outdoor racing with my son many a year ago. And when he moved off of the race team he was with before, you was also one of the reasons that we wanted to go over as well, because you learn alongside some great drivers you've mentioned earlier, like Oli and Elliot and Zach and Tony and people. We've got all this experience from trackside that we've learned over the years, and I always thought one of those pieces to have on here would be alongside Chris Granger for a season as well. While we sat there in the pits, listening to how you talked about preparation and stuff like that was instrumental in helping. And so personally from me, thank you. I appreciate that, and thank you for being here with us tonight.
No, thanks. It's that's nice to hear, and thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. It's been good fun.
So we said when we started this podcast we weren't planning on doing it weekly, but we have now done 3 in a row to kick things off. But that's been three pretty big events for us to talk about, with the ETS in Down, the Snowbirds in Florida, and the TITC. So we won't be back next week. We're going to have a little bit of a break, and you can have a break from hearing our voices for a little while as well. But join us again soon, because the next thing on our list is for us to wrap up the UK winter carpet racing season. We've got both Rug Racers and EWS concluding over the next couple of weeks. So we'll get some more content ready as those things wrap up.
And if anyone does actually know where Chris finished, was it 6th or was it 7th? Let us know in the comments, because he was there and he doesn't know.
Yeah, if you don't know, just please put it down in the comments. I'd love to know. Was I 6th or 7th? Have I got Hara's trophy? Has he got mine? Who knows?
Is there a lawsuit coming? Important information.
So let's close things off there. Let's see if we can get hold of one of those bench chassis from the TITC. If you've got one of those as well and want to send it in, right below in the comments as well. But otherwise, join us next time on the podcast, and we'll find out who's bent a chassis at some race in the UK very soon.
Fast laps, clean lines, that's how we go. Thanks for tuning in to the Bench SC on Road Podcast Show.